The meeting concluded an hour later with clear action items and a shared sense of purpose that had been entirely absent in Archangel's hierarchical culture. As Hannah and Rebecca moved on to their next appointments, I remained in the conference room, reviewing the quarterly report one final time. My phone buzzed with a message from Diane. Sentencing confirmed for next Thursday. Will you attend? I considered the question carefully. Michael's sentencing was the final formal closure of the legal process we had set in motion. Part of me wanted to witness it, to see the completion of the accountability I had engineered. But another part recognized that my presence would be misinterpreted as gloating or vindictiveness rather than the simple observation of justice being served. No, I replied after careful consideration. That chapter is finished. Forward your notes afterward. Another message appeared, this one from Emma. Dinner tonight to celebrate the FDA approval? The usual place at 7? I smiled, responding with confirmation. Emma had been my constant through this entire journey, the friend who had stood by me during the darkest days of discovery, the meticulous planning, and now the rebuilding. As I gathered my things to leave, a final message arrived from Javier, who had returned to his regular cybersecurity consulting after our operation concluded. Anniversary gift arrived safely. Enjoy. I smiled, knowing what awaited me at home. Exactly 1 year after giving Michael the watch that documented his downfall, Javier had custom-designed a security system for my new lakefront home, one that ensured no one could ever surveil or manipulate. Me again. The symmetry was pleasing. Outside Phoenix's headquarters, spring sunshine warmed my face as I walked toward my car. The divorce settlement that had given Michael full control of Archangel had indeed left me with a fraction of what I was entitled to, exactly as planned. But my strategic investments in the restructured Phoenix Medical Technologies had already restored my financial position twice over. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't just exposing the truth, it was creating something better from the ruins. That evening at dinner, Emma raised her glass in a toast. To Phoenix, to FDA approval, and to you, the architect of justice. I clinked my glass against hers, but shook my head slightly. Not just me, it took all of us. Rebecca's documentation, Hannah's recordings, your support, Diane's legal strategy. Michael's downfall wasn't engineered by a single person. Neither was Phoenix's rise. Still, Emma insisted, none of it would have happened without your blueprint. You transformed a personal betrayal into systemic justice. I considered this as I sipped my wine. Perhaps she was right. The watch had been my conception, the elegant Trojan horse that recorded Michael's undoing in his own words. The fabricated evidence trail had been my design, each digital breadcrumb placed with perfect psychological understanding of how he would respond. But the motivation had evolved beyond personal retribution. Somewhere during those months of planning, my focus had shifted from punishing Michael to protecting others from his predatory methods. I received a letter from the younger Chen sister, I told Emma, the one whose medical device startup was still in early development when Archangel collapsed. The neural pain management system? I nodded. She completed her prototype with proper funding from Phoenix. Initial clinical trials show 89% efficacy in chronic pain reduction without addictive side effects. Emma smiled. That's the real victory, isn't it? Not just Michael's punishment, but what's been created in the aftermath. Exactly, I agreed. Michael saw these innovations as commodities to be acquired and exploited. We're treating them as they should be, potential solutions to real human suffering. Our conversation drifted to other topics. Emma's new position at a prestigious law firm, my tentative steps back into the dating world, plans for summer travel, normal life resuming after the extraordinary intensity of the past year. Later that night, I stood on the balcony of my new home overlooking Lake Michigan, watching the moonlight create a silver path across the dark water. The security system Javier had installed hummed with silent efficiency, creating an impenetrable digital perimeter. My phone displayed a final headline for the day. Phoenix Medical Technologies announces breakthrough neural interface FDA approval. Stock soars 32%. Beneath the corporate success was a more meaningful victory. Rebecca Chen's innovation would soon be helping patients with neurological conditions that had previously been untreatable. Sandoval's microfluidic diagnostic system was already deployed in underserved communities. Each founder whose work had been stolen was now seeing their vision realized as intended. The watch that had been my instrument of justice was now evidence in a federal repository, its battery long dead, its purpose fulfilled. Michael would spend the next decade in prison, his reputation destroyed, his sophisticated fraud exposed. But I found that I thought of him less and less as days passed. He had become increasingly irrelevant, a cautionary tale rather than a central figure in my narrative. My doorbell rang, an unexpected sound at this late hour. The security system displayed Diane on the front step, holding a folder and wearing an expression I couldn't quite interpret. "Sorry for the late visit," she said when I opened the door. "But I thought you should see this immediately." She handed me an envelope bearing the federal prosecutor's seal. Inside was a letter confirming that in exchange for additional testimony about international financial crimes, Michael's sentence recommendation had been reduced from 12 years to 8. "Does this change anything for us?" I asked, scanning. The document. "Absolutely nothing," Diane confirmed. "The civil judgments remain intact. The restructuring is complete. His testimony merely helps the government with cases against larger financial criminals." I returned the letter to its envelope, finding I had no strong emotional response to this development. 8 years or 12, Michael would still emerge from prison to find his reputation destroyed, his business dismantled, his fraudulent practices thoroughly documented in case law. "Thank you for bringing this," I told Diane, "but it doesn't matter anymore. That chapter is closed." After she left, I returned to the balcony, considering how thoroughly my life had transformed. The woman who had discovered her husband's betrayal 18 months ago, devastated, humiliated, uncertain, had evolved into someone stronger, clearer, more purposeful. The elaborate revenge I had engineered had served its purpose, not just in bringing Michael to justice, but in liberating me from the constraints of our relationship. I was no longer defined by my connection to him, as wife, as investor, as supporter of his ambitions. The watch I had given Michael as a goodbye gift had indeed transformed into something unexpected, not just an instrument of revenge, but a catalyst for renewal. For 14 innovators whose work had been stolen, for dozens of employees now working in an ethical environment, for countless patients who would benefit from technologies now being developed with integrity, and for me. The silver path on the lake shimmered as clouds passed over the moon. Spring wind carried the promise of renewal, of growth, of possibilities not yet imagined. I had given Michael a watch that counted down the hours to his downfall. In return, I had received something far more valuable, a future entirely my own. Time reveals all truths indeed, and sometimes time also heals what truth exposes. The perfect goodbye gift, after all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. "You told Irina I was a means to an end," I replied calmly. "That was 5 years ago, Michael. 5 years during which I continued building your success while you planned my eventual disposal. So yes, this is calculated. Just as you calculated. How long to use me before discarding me?" His expression flickered, surprised that I knew about those private messages, then quickly masked calculation. "We can still resolve this," he suggested, leaning forward. "The allegations haven't been proven. The companies can be restructured, ownership reassigned to the original founders." "That's already happening," Diane interjected. The court has appointed a special master to oversee the unwinding of the fraudulent acquisitions. The legitimate aspects of Archangel will be preserved, but under new management. What new management? Michael demanded, frustration breaking through his facade. A consortium led by Rebecca Chen and the other founders, I replied, with Hannah Pritchard as interim CEO. Hannah? Genuine shock registered on his face. My assistant, Hannah? Your assistant, with 2 engineering degrees and comprehensive documentation of your fraudulent practices, I confirmed. She's been quite helpful. Michael's last pretense of control crumbled. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I learned from the best, I replied without inflection. You always told me to consider every angle, anticipate every counterattack, and leave no avenue of escape when closing a deal. His watch beeped softly, a low battery warning. Somehow that small sound crystallized the moment, marking the end of our elaborate chess match. What happens now? He asked, resignation finally settling into his features. Now, I said, gathering my things, I leave you to face the consequences of your actions. The FBI is currently securing Archangel's offices. Your partners are already negotiating plea arrangements, and your investors are preparing civil suits to recover their funds. And you just walk away, he said bitterly. With a clear conscience, I confirmed, standing, which is more than you'll have. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced at the screen, then looked back at Michael. The FBI would like to speak with you. They're waiting in the lobby. His face went completely blank, the expression of a man watching his entire world disintegrate. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the door, Diane following a step behind. Caroline, Michael called after me, a note of desperation in his voice. I paused, looking back at him one last time. Was any of it real? He asked. Us, I mean. Or was I just a project from the beginning? For a moment, I considered telling him the truth, that I had genuinely loved him once, believed in his vision, committed myself to our partnership, that his betrayal had been all the more devastating because my investment had been authentic. Instead, I simply smiled. Time reveals all truths, Michael. It's engraved on your watch. As I walked away, I heard his bitter laugh behind me, followed by the watch's final battery warning. Its purpose fulfilled, the elegant timepiece would soon go silent. But the evidence it had gathered would echo through courtrooms for years to come, ensuring that Michael Harrington and his partners would face the full measure of justice for their crimes. In the lobby, federal agents were indeed waiting, their presence causing a stir among the club's prestigious membership. I nodded to them as I passed, receiving a professional acknowledgement in return. They knew exactly who I was and the role I had played in bringing this case to fruition. Outside, autumn sunlight bathed Michigan Avenue in golden light. For the first time in months, perhaps years, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to release. The machinery of justice was now in motion, operating under its own power. My part was essentially complete. My phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca Chen. It's done. Special Master has secured all technology documentation. Our innovations are coming home. I smiled, replying simply, Justice served. Another message appeared, this one from Emma. Just saw the perp walk on CNBC. Tell me we're celebrating tonight. Absolutely, I typed back. Bring champagne. The final text came from Javier. Watch battery died. Last transmission shows subject. In custody. Mission complete. As my car arrived, I took one last look at the Standard Club's imposing facade. Inside, Michael was facing the beginning of his reckoning, the first of many as federal investigations, investor lawsuits, and criminal charges unfolded. The elaborate gift I had placed on his wrist had served its purpose perfectly. A silent witness recording his downfall, the perfect Trojan horse delivering justice disguised as reconciliation. Sometimes the most appropriate parting gift isn't a gesture of peace, but a mechanism of accountability. Michael had taught me that, though not in the way he intended. Time indeed reveals all truths, and Michael's time had finally run out. 6 months passed with the swift efficiency of justice when backed by irrefutable evidence. Winter had given way to spring, and Chicago had emerged from its frozen slumber into tentative bloom, much like my own life. The headline in the Wall Street Journal said it all. Former Archangel CEO Harrington pleads guilty to fraud, faces 12-year sentence. The accompanying photo showed Michael entering the federal courthouse, diminished in a suit that no longer fit quite right after months in detention. His partners had accepted plea deals months earlier, trading testimony for reduced sentences, but Michael had maintained his innocence until the prosecution presented the watch recordings in pretrial hearings. His expression when those recordings were played, his own voice meticulously documenting his crimes, had been captured by courtroom artists with painful accuracy. The moment he finally understood the completeness of his defeat, I folded the newspaper and set it aside, no longer needing to follow every development in Michael's legal saga. That chapter was effectively closed. "Coffee?" Rebecca Chen asked, placing a steaming mug on the conference table before me. "Thanks," I replied, smiling at the woman who had become both a business partner and friend during these transformative months. We were meeting in the headquarters of Phoenix Medical Technologies, the company formed from the ashes of Archangel, now led by a consortium of the founders whose innovations had been stolen. The glass-walled conference room offered sweeping views of Lake Michigan, the spring sunlight dancing across its surface. "The FDA approval came through this morning," Rebecca announced, taking her seat. "Our neural interface system is officially cleared for clinical implementation. First surgeries scheduled for next month at Mayo Clinic." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely pleased. "That's remarkably fast for regulatory approval. Turns out when you don't falsify data or bribe reviewers, legitimate innovations move through the system quite efficiently," she replied with a wry smile. "Having your family's connections supporting us properly didn't hurt either." I acknowledged this with a slight nod. After Michael's downfall, I had indeed leveraged my family's considerable influence in the medical industry, not to circumvent regulations as he had claimed in his fabricated evidence, but to ensure Rebecca's groundbreaking technology received fair and expedited review. The conference room door opened as Hannah Pritchard entered, now carrying herself with the confident authority of her position as Phoenix's CEO. At 32, she was one of the youngest executives leading a major medical technology company, but her stewardship during the turbulent transition had proven her capabilities beyond question. "Sorry I'm late," she apologized, setting down a tablet displaying the company's latest financial projections. The investor call ran long. Everyone's excited about the FDA approval. "How are the numbers looking?" I asked, though I'd already reviewed them earlier that morning. "Exceeding projections by 23%, Hannah reported with satisfaction. "The pre-orders from major hospital systems are double what we anticipated. Turns out there's substantial market demand for medical technology that actually works as promised." The three of us shared a knowing smile. Phoenix had risen from Archangel's collapse with a fundamentally different approach: transparent operations, founder-centric development, and an ethical framework that prioritized medical outcomes over profit margins. The market had responded enthusiastically. "The restructuring is complete," Hannah continued, pulling up detailed charts. "All 14 founding teams have been reintegrated with proper ownership of their innovations. The legitimate portions of Archangel's portfolio have been preserved under the new management structure." "And the employees?" I asked, thinking of the people who had worked under Michael's regime without participating in his fraud. 93% retained, Hannah confirmed. Those who were complicit in the fraud were identified and separated. Everyone else has transitioned to the new company culture remarkably well. As the meeting continued with discussions of expansion plans, and research priorities, I found my attention occasionally drifting to the window. From this height, I could see the building that housed my old apartment with Michael, the penthouse we had shared during our marriage, where I had first discovered his betrayal through those devastating text messages. It seemed like another lifetime. Now, Caroline? Rebecca's voice pulled me back to the present. Any thoughts on the strategic partnership proposal from European markets? Sorry, I refocused on the discussion. Yes, I think it's promising, but we should approach cautiously. European regulatory frameworks differ significantly from ours. That's impossible, Michael insisted, though doubt had crept into his voice. Our systems are impenetrable. The only person who had that kind of access was... The silence that followed contained his realization, the moment he began to understand, that I might have been several steps ahead of him all along. Check the evidence we found on Caroline's server, he ordered Terrence. Verify it's authentic. Now. While Michael's team scrambled to assess their situation, financial news channels had fully pivoted from celebrating Archangel's acquisitions to covering the explosive fraud allegations. The contrast was exactly as we'd planned: maximum market impact, maximum reputational damage. At 9:25 a.m., the first investors began calling, demanding explanations. Michael attempted damage control, but his usual smooth confidence had abandoned him. The watch captured increasingly desperate conversations. Yes, we're aware of the allegations. No, they're completely baseless. Of course, we'll be issuing a formal response. I understand your concerns, but I assure you. By 9:40 a.m., the situation had deteriorated further. The SEC had announced a formal investigation, and 2 of Archangel's board members had issued statements distancing themselves from management decisions. Michael, Schiff's voice came through clearly, now in a private conversation. We have another problem. The evidence you found on Caroline's server, our tech team says it appears to have been fabricated. The digital signatures don't authenticate against public records. That's impossible, Michael insisted. I verified them myself. Well, they're not holding up now. And there's something else. There are access logs showing someone using your credentials to enter a restricted system. If these get out... Are you saying I was set up? Michael's voice had taken on an edge of paranoia. I'm saying we need to consider the possibility that Caroline has been several moves ahead this entire time. A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of Michael's increasingly agitated breathing. His heart rate had climbed to 128 BPM, full stress response. At 10:15 a.m., the first investors began publicly withdrawing from pending deals with Archangel. Bloomberg ran a breaking news banner. Major pension fund freezes $200 million commitment to Archangel following fraud allegations. The watch captured the moment Michael's composure finally shattered. A crash as something was thrown across his office, followed by a string of expletives. How did she do this? He demanded of no one in particular. How the hell did she orchestrate something this comprehensive? The answer, of course, was ticking away on his wrist, silently recording his downfall. By 11 a.m., Archangel was in full crisis mode. Their PR team had issued a terse statement denying all allegations and promising a detailed response, but the market had already rendered its verdict. Analysis estimated that when trading resumed, Archangel's stock would lose at least 60% of its value. More significantly, the Department of Justice had announced it was reviewing the fraud allegations for potential criminal charges. We need to talk to Caroline, Michael told Schiff, his voice now eerily calm, the calm of someone who has moved beyond panic to desperate calculation. She's the key to all this. Whatever evidence she has, whatever she's planning, we need to get ahead of it. The meeting is at 12:30, Schiff reminded him. But given what's happened, I'm not sure she'll show. Oh, she'll be there, Michael replied with sudden certainty. Caroline never misses an opportunity to witness her victories. His insight into my character was more accurate than I would have liked to admit. I had indeed been planning to attend the meeting, not out of gloating, but to ensure Michael understood exactly how thoroughly he had been outmaneuvered. "Are you sure that's wise?" Javier asked as I prepared to leave for the Standard Club. "He's cornered and desperate. That makes him unpredictable." "It's not about wisdom," I replied, checking my appearance one last time. "It's about completion. This ends face to face, the way it began." For this final confrontation, I had chosen a tailored crimson suit, powerful, unmistakable, the color of victory. Michael had always insisted I wear neutral tones for important meetings. Claiming bold colors undermined my credibility. Another small rebellion. "Maintain watch monitoring," I instructed Javier. "If anything changes with his location or status, alert me immediately." "The battery's down to 19%, he noted. "We may lose connectivity soon." "It's served its purpose," I replied. "Everything essential has been captured and preserved." The Standard Club was buzzing with activity when I arrived at 12:15 p.m. Financial news played silently on screens throughout the lobby, all showing variations of the same story. Archangel Capital's spectacular fall from grace. Members in expensive suits clustered in corners, discussing the implications in hushed tones. I was escorted to a private dining room overlooking Michigan Avenue, arriving deliberately early to control the setting. Diane was already waiting, professional in her understated navy suit, a tablet displaying real-time updates on the legal proceedings. "The SEC has expanded the investigation to include all of Archangel's portfolio companies," she reported as I took my seat. "The Attorney General is convening a grand jury to consider criminal indictments, and the FBI has just obtained warrants to secure Archangel's servers before any evidence can be destroyed." "Perfect timing," I noted, glancing at my watch. "They should be executing those warrants right about now." Sure enough, my phone buzzed with a message from Hannah. "FBI agents just entered the building. Executives being told to step away from their computers." Absolute chaos. Michael arrived at 12:28 p.m., exactly 2 minutes early, a habit ingrained from years of power dynamics in business meetings. David Schiff followed a step behind, clutching a leather portfolio like a shield. The change in Michael was immediately apparent. His typically immaculate appearance had faltered. Tie slightly askew, a light sheen of sweat on his forehead, the confident posture replaced by tense vigilance. Only the watch remained perfectly positioned on his wrist, still faithfully transmitting his physiological state and every word he would speak. "Caroline," he greeted me, his voice controlled but strained. "This is quite a day for a casual lunch." "Is it?" I replied, remaining seated as he approached. I thought it was rather illuminating. His eyes narrowed slightly, taking in my deliberate composure, the crimson suit, Diane's presence. Understanding dawned in his expression, confirmation that his suspicions were correct. "So it was you," he said softly, taking the seat across from me. "All of it." "Not all," I corrected. "I didn't force you to steal from 14 founders. I didn't compel you to create fraudulent contracts or manipulate regulatory filings. I simply ensured those actions were properly documented and brought to light." Schiff cleared his throat awkwardly. "Ms. Reeves, given the circumstances, perhaps we should discuss potential resolutions that might benefit all parties." Diane smiled. Thinly, "I'm struggling to imagine what resolution you believe might be possible at this point. Your clients are facing federal indictments, Mr. Schiff. The evidence is extensive and irrefutable." "Evidence that was obtained through questionable means," Schiff countered, attempting to regain familiar legal territory. "Unauthorized access to private systems could constitute—" "You're referring to Michael's intrusion into what he believed were my private servers?" I interrupted. "Yes, that was indeed unauthorized. Fortunately, we have comprehensive documentation of that activity as well." Michael's expression hardened as understanding dawned. "The watch," he said flatly, looking down at his wrist. It's not just a watch, is it? It's exactly what I said it was, I replied. A gift specifically chosen for you. One that has been faithfully recording your activities, your conversations, your heart rate, even your excited pulse when you thought you'd found leverage against me. The color drained from his face as the full implications registered. You set me up, the security breach, the files about your family, all fabricated, yes. Designed specifically to appeal to your particular brand of opportunism. I leaned forward slightly. Did you really think I would give away my interest in Archangel without a strategy? That I would simply walk away after discovering you had been systematically stealing from innovators while planning to discard me? This is entrapment, Schiff interjected desperately. Any evidence obtained through deception is completely admissible when the deception was implemented by a private citizen responding to ongoing criminal activity, Diane completed smoothly. Perhaps you should review Meredith v's Tallarico before continuing that line of argument. Michael had fallen silent, his mind visibly racing behind his eyes as he reassessed the past 8 months, the seemingly simple divorce, my apparent capitulation. In settlement negotiations, the gift that had seemed like a peace offering but was actually the instrument of his destruction. Why? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Not the fraud allegations. I understand your moral outrage there. But this level of calculated destruction? This isn't just justice, Caroline. This is annihilation. I studied him for a moment, searching for any hint of the man I had once loved, the visionary I had believed in enough to invest years of my life supporting. There was nothing there but a cornered manipulator still looking for leverage. Laying groundwork to control the narrative, I observed, checking my secure phone. Messages were already flowing in from our team. Diane. Legal team assembled. Filing systems prepped. T-3 hours. Rebecca Chen. In position. Just received. Another urgent call from NeuroCrest CEO. Maintaining radio silence as instructed. Hannah. Arrived at office. Michael called demanding press release distribution at 7:30 instead of 8:00, accelerating further. I sent a group update. Maintain original timeline. Let them distribute early. Enhances the contrast effect when filings hit. The morning unfolded, with clockwork precision as we watched Michael execute his grand strategy, completely unaware of the invisible machinery working against him. The watch tracked his arrival at Archangel's offices at 6:42 a.m., earlier than even his most dedicated days. The pressure is working perfectly, Javier noted as we monitored communications flowing through our shadow network. He's convinced your team is closing in on his digital intrusion, which is making him rush, bypassing normal protocols, I added, reviewing the updated press release Hannah had discreetly forwarded. Look at this language. Revolutionary proprietary technologies, and developed exclusively by Archangel's innovation team. They're not even pretending these were acquisitions anymore. More like confessions, Javier agreed. The founders' legal teams will have a field day with these claims. At 7:24 a.m., 6 minutes ahead of their accelerated schedule, Archangel distributed their press release announcing the simultaneous acquisition of 7 technology companies, headlined by NeuroCrest's groundbreaking neural interface system, the same technology that had been stolen from Rebecca Chen through contractual manipulation. Financial news channels immediately picked up the story, with Bloomberg and CNBC running breaking news banners about Archangel's market-disrupting move. The watch's audio capture transmitted the sounds of celebration in Michael's office, champagne corks popping, congratulatory calls being received, his partners arriving, for an impromptu toast to their success. The stock is already up 12% in pre-market trading, Javier observed, monitoring the financial feeds. They're creating exactly the feeding frenzy they wanted. For about 90 more minutes, I noted calmly, checking the countdown. Timer on our filing system. Are the trading halt mechanisms primed? Ready and waiting. The moment the SEC filings hit, automatic triggers will freeze trading on Archangel and all affected portfolio companies. I sent a final confirmation to Diane. Proceed as planned. 9 a.m. filings. No adjustments to timeline. The watch audio captured Michael in his element, giving interviews to financial reporters, his voice brimming with the confident charisma that had once charmed me. He was painting himself as a visionary, a champion of medical innovation who had recognized the potential in technologies others had overlooked. The real breakthrough, he told one reporter, was understanding how to integrate these disparate technologies into a cohesive ecosystem. That's what Archangel brings to the table. Not just funding, but strategic vision. The irony was almost painful. He was describing exactly what I had contributed during our marriage, the integrative vision, connecting different technologies. He had simply excised me from the narrative and replaced my contributions with his own imagined genius. At 8:30 a.m., Michael convened an all-hands meeting at Archangel, gathering every employee in their expansive atrium to announce their triumph. The watch captured his address clearly. Today marks the beginning of Archangel's next chapter. With these acquisitions, we've solidified our position as the preeminent medical technology venture firm in the country. Our stock is already up 17%, and this is just the beginning. The employees applauded dutifully as Michael continued, outlining his vision for the future, a future that, unknown to everyone in that atrium except Hannah, would never materialize. At 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before our filings, I received an unexpected call from Emma. "Michael's people just reached out to me," she said without preamble. "They're trying to get to you through me." My pulse quickened slightly. What exactly did they say? His lawyer, Schiff, called claiming they have concerning information about activities connected to your family business that you should be aware of. They're requesting an urgent meeting with you at 10 a.m. I exchanged glances with Javier, who had been monitoring the watch data. "Michael's heart rate just spiked," he confirmed. "Someone must have brought him news." They're making a last-minute attempt to leverage the fabricated evidence, I realized. Probably planning to suggest they'll keep it quiet in exchange for my silence about Archangel's practices. "What should I tell them?" Emma asked. "Tell them I'm unavailable until noon, but could meet them at the Standard Club at 12:30. Send my regards to Michael." After hanging up, I explained to Javier. "This works perfectly. By noon, the filings will be public, the stock will be frozen, and Michael will be facing the beginning of his nightmare. When he expects to be threatening me with fabricated evidence, he'll instead be confronted with the collapse of everything he's built. Psychological warfare at its finest," Javier noted with professional appreciation. At precisely 8:55 a.m., Diane sent the confirmation we'd been waiting for. All systems green, filings prepared, submission protocols activated. I took a deep breath, centering myself for the moment we'd spent months orchestrating. "Initiate final monitoring sequence," I instructed Javier. "I want real-time capture of everything in Michael's office the moment the filings hit." "Already configured," he confirmed, adjusting the audio sensitivity on the watch feed. "We'll hear every word, every reaction." The countdown timer on our main screen ticked inexorably toward 9 a.m. In these final moments, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. Not just the months of planning this revenge, but the years before that. The genuine love I'd once felt for Michael, the dreams we'd shared, the moment I'd discovered his true nature through those devastating text messages. This wasn't just about retribution. It was about restoration, of justice, of balance, of truth. At exactly 9 a.m., our system executed its programmed sequence. 14 meticulously documented complaints were simultaneously filed with the SEC, the State Attorney General's Office, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Each filing detailed specific instances of fraud, intellectual property theft, and securities violations committed by Archangel Capital Partners and its executives. At 9:01 a.m., trading in Archangel and its affected portfolio companies was automatically Halted pending regulatory review. Standard procedure following such filings. At 9:05 a.m., press releases detailing the allegations went live across major news outlets, accompanied by statements from all 14 founders describing how their innovations had been systematically stolen through contractual manipulation. And at 9:10 a.m., every major investor in Archangel received a comprehensive documentation package outlining the evidence against the firm, including excerpts from Hannah's recordings clearly demonstrating fraudulent intent. Through the watch audio, we heard the moment Michael's world began to collapse. First came the confused buzz of notifications on multiple phones in his office. Then an assistant's voice tense with alarm. "Michael, we have a situation. Trading in our stock has been halted." "What? Why?" Michael's voice, sharp with sudden concern. "Regulatory filing? Multiple regulatory filings. They're all over the financial news. Allegations of fraud, IP theft." Another voice broke in. Terrence Kalman, sounding panicked. "It's not just the SEC. It's the Attorney General, the FBI, and it's not just one complaint. Bloomberg is reporting 14 separate founders have filed simultaneous actions." A moment of stunned silence followed. When Michael spoke again, his voice had lost its confident edge. "Get Schiff in here, now, and lock down all communications. No one talks to the press, no one responds to anything until we assess the situation." His heart rate had spiked to 115 BPM. Stress response, fight or flight activation. "Sir?" A different voice. Hannah's entered the audio capture, perfectly professional despite her role in his downfall. Reuters is requesting comment on statements from Rebecca Chen, alleging that NeuroCrest's core technology was appropriated from her original patents through contractual manipulation. "Not now, Hannah," Michael snapped. "Just block all incoming calls." "There's more, sir. CNBC has a live statement from Sandoval claiming his project was—" "I said not now." Michael's voice had risen to a shout. "Where the hell is Schiff?" The office descended into chaos as more notifications poured in. Through it all, the watch transmitted every moment with perfect clarity. The panicked conversations, the desperate attempts to understand what was happening, the dawning realization that they were under coordinated attack. "Check, Caroline," Michael suddenly ordered, his voice dropping to a tense murmur as he apparently moved to a more private area. "Find out if she's behind this." "Sir, she's requested a meeting at 12:30 at the Standard Club," Hannah replied, maintaining her cover perfectly. "Emma Wilson just confirmed." A sharp laugh, bitter and disbelieving. "Of course she has. She knew this was coming." At 9:17 a.m., David Schiff finally arrived, breathless from rushing. "It's bad, Michael, really bad. These filings are comprehensive, detailed. Documentation, recordings, internal emails we thought were secured. Someone on the inside has been gathering evidence for months." My phone buzzed with a call from Diane. "Caroline, we have a situation," she said without preamble. "Judge Harmon was just assigned to the regulatory filings." I felt a chill of apprehension. William Harmon was a notoriously pro-business federal judge with connections to several of Michael's investors. That's not coincidental. Absolutely not. Someone in the clerk's office has been compromised. We need to adjust our strategy. I considered our options. "Can we request reassignment?" On D. "What grounds?" "We'd need to demonstrate clear conflict of interest, which means revealing aspects of our case prematurely." "Then we adapt," I decided. "Prepare alternate filings for the State Attorney General's office and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. We'll submit simultaneously with the SEC complaint." "Already in progress," Diane confirmed. "But it means we need to formally document criminal allegations, not just regulatory violations." "Hannah's evidence helps with that," I noted. "Focus on the explicit fraud elements, the contract alterations, the deliberate misrepresentations." To founders. After finishing the call, I briefed Javier on this new complication. His response was tactical and immediate. "We should activate the final layer of the digital evidence trail," he suggested. "Make Michael believe you're preparing countermeasures. It will push him to make even more mistakes." "Do it," I agreed. "And intensify the server security alerts. Let's make him think his window of opportunity is closing rapidly." While Javier implemented these adjustments, I reviewed Hannah's recordings more thoroughly. One conversation between Michael and James Winston was particularly damning. Explicit discussion of how they had systematically extracted intellectual property from female founders by exploiting contract clauses that male founders typically challenged and had removed. They specifically targeted women, I realized, disgust rising as I listened. They identified female founders as easier to manipulate through their supportive mentor approach. "That's going to play horribly in the press," Javier observed grimly. "And in court." "It should," I replied. This wasn't just fraud. It was predatory and discriminatory fraud. I forwarded this specific recording to Diane with instructions to highlight it in the criminal complaints. Then I contacted Rebecca Chen, warning her about the accelerated announcement timeline and the potential for increased pressure from Archangel. "They just called again," she confirmed, "offering an exclusive consulting contract if I meet with them tomorrow." The amount they proposed was significant. "They're trying to buy your silence before Monday's announcement. Document everything, but don't engage." "Don't worry," Rebecca assured me. "I've learned my lesson about their contracts." By late evening, our monitoring showed Michael in full crisis management mode. He'd scheduled calls with all 3 partners for 7 a.m. Sunday, clearly planning to further accelerate their timeline, in response to the fabricated security alerts in my system. "He's panicking," Javier noted as we watched the activity logs. "Making exactly the mistakes we wanted." "But not too panicked," I cautioned. "We need him functional enough to proceed with the announcement, just rattled enough to bypass normal safeguards." "The balance seems perfect," he assessed. "He's convinced he still has the upper hand with the fabricated evidence against your family, but now believes he's in a race against your discovery of his intrusion." I nodded, satisfied with our progress. "Tomorrow will be critical. Once they commit to the Monday announcement internally, they'll be fully locked into our timeline." Before retiring for the night, I sent one final message to our network of founders. "Acceleration confirmed. Prepare for Monday morning announcement from Archangel regarding multiple acquisitions. Our response follows at 9 a.m. Maintain radio. Silence until then." Sunday dawned with frantic activity on our monitoring systems. Michael's early morning conference call with his partners revealed their adjusted strategy, not just announcing the NeuroCrest acquisition, but simultaneously revealing several other pending acquisitions of companies founded by the very entrepreneurs who would be filing complaints against them. "They're trying to create a market frenzy to drown out any potential allegations," I observed as we listened to their planning. "It won't work," Javier assured me. "The regulatory filings will halt all trading in the affected companies immediately." Throughout the day, we tracked Michael's movements as he engaged in desperate preparation. Calls to investors, hasty meetings with his PR team, and multiple conversations with his partners about contingency plans should I somehow discover their activities. The watch captured every conversation, its sophisticated audio system performing flawlessly even in noisy environments. Michael remained completely unaware that his gift was systematically documenting his own downfall. By late afternoon, Archangel's press release had been finalized and distributed to news outlets under embargo until 8 a.m. Monday. Their investor presentation had been updated to feature the acquisitions prominently, with elaborate projections about market dominance and revenue growth, based entirely on technologies they had effectively stolen from their founders. "They've committed fully," Javier confirmed as we reviewed the press materials Michael had emailed to his team. "No turning back now." "And our countermeasures? Everything is in place. SEC filings ready for 9:00 a.m. submission. Press packages. Prepared for 9:05 distribution. Investor notifications programmed for 9:10 release. I nodded, feeling a strange calm descend as the elaborate machinery of Michael's destruction clicked into its final configuration. After months of planning, years of documentation, and a lifetime of being underestimated, justice was less than 24 hours away. One final check, I said, reviewing our evidence packages. Are we certain the watch data is properly preserved and authenticated for court proceedings? Triple redundant storage with blockchain verification timestamps, Javier confirmed. Every conversation, every location, every elevated heartbeat when he thought he was winning, all preserved with perfect chain of custody. My phone buzzed with a message from Diane. Judge situation handled. Case reassigned to Judge Martinez through procedural intervention. Filing systems prepped and tested. Legal team standing by from 7:00 a.m. Everything was aligned perfectly. I sent a final message to Hannah. Maintain normal operations tomorrow. Be at your desk by 7:30 a.m. Preserve any new communications regarding announcements. Her response was simple. Understood. Good luck. As evening settled over Chicago, I stood by my window watching the city lights flicker against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Michael was making his final preparations, believing he had outmaneuvered his ex-wife through clever digital espionage, unaware that every action he took further sealed his fate. The watch showed him at his penthouse, heart rate slightly elevated but stable, the pattern of a man who believed himself in control, confidently awaiting his moment of triumph. Should we implement the final security alert? Javier asked, joining me at the window. The one that would make him think you've discovered the breach? I considered the question carefully. No. Let him sleep soundly tonight, certain of his victory. It will make tomorrow's awakening that much more devastating. Javier nodded, understanding the psychological warfare at play. One last thing. The watch battery shows 37% remaining. Will it last through tomorrow's events? It doesn't need to, I replied. By noon tomorrow, its purpose will be fulfilled. Michael will have more pressing concerns than a dying battery. Later, as Javier dozed on the couch among his monitoring equipment, I reviewed our entire operation one final time. Every contingency had been addressed, every weakness fortified, every potential counterattack anticipated. The plan was as perfect as human ingenuity could make it. I sent one last message to Emma. Everything is ready. Tomorrow we restore balance. Her response made me smile despite the tension. Destroy him, but save me a front row seat. Sleep came surprisingly easily that night, perhaps because for the first time in years I knew exactly what the morning would bring. Not hope or possibilities or promises, but certainty. The absolute certainty of justice long deferred but finally at hand. The watch continued transmitting through the darkness, its elegant hands marking the final hours of Michael Harrington's fraudulent empire. With each tick, it counted down to a reckoning he couldn't begin to imagine. Tomorrow, time would indeed reveal all truths. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity of autumn. I woke at 5:30 a.m., a full hour before my alarm, adrenaline already coursing through my system. Today was the day everything would change, not just for Michael, but for the 14 founders whose innovations had been stolen, for the employees being terminated for asking uncomfortable questions, and for me. The watch telemetry showed Michael was already awake and moving about his penthouse, his heart rate elevated at 94 BPM. Excitement mingled with anxiety. Perfect, Javier. Had maintained his vigil through the night, catching brief periods of sleep between system checks. When I emerged from my bedroom, he was already reviewing the morning's data while the coffee machine hummed in the background. He's been up since 4:15, Javier reported, sliding a cup toward me. Made 17 phone calls already, including 3 to the PR team adjusting the press release wording, and 2 to financial reporters giving exclusive background on the acquisitions. Perfect. Michael needs to believe I'm becoming aware of his intrusion, just enough to accelerate his timeline without changing his strategy. By mid-morning, our trap was fully set. Michael and his team would continue operating under the false confidence that they possessed devastating leverage against me, while in reality, they were creating an irrefutable record of their own criminality. My secure phone chimed with a message from Diane. SEC contact confirms Monday readiness. All 12 founder complaints prepared for simultaneous filing. 14 now, I replied. Sandoval and Harriman confirmed yesterday. Another message appeared, this one from Rebecca Chen. Neurocrest CEO just called inviting me to consultant meeting Monday. Obvious attempt to secure my silence before announcement. Decline, I texted back. Site scheduling conflict. We need them confident until Monday's filing. I checked the watch telemetry again. Michael had left Archangel's offices and was heading toward Michigan Avenue, shopping, most likely. His pattern on successful days typically included rewarding himself with some luxury purchase. Today would be no different, especially given his belief that he'd neutralized any threat I might pose. I'm meeting Emma for lunch, I told Javier, gathering my purse. Monitor the partners' activities. If they contact any of the founders on our list, alert me immediately. Already watching them, he confirmed. Winston has been researching Rebecca Chen's current projects. He might be planning outreach. Let's hope he does, I replied. Any contact now would strengthen our case for coordinated intimidation. The restaurant Emma had chosen was a small bistro in Wicker Park, deliberately far from Michael's usual territory. As I approached our table, I was surprised to see her sitting with a familiar figure, Hannah Pritchard, Michael's executive assistant. Before, "You say anything," Emma began, noting my expression. "Hannah contacted me. She has information." I studied Hannah carefully as I took my seat. At 28, she'd worked for Michael for 3 years, managing his schedule, communications, and often his personal affairs. Though we'd interacted at company events, our relationship had been cordial but distant, exactly as Michael preferred. "Know about the Neurocrest situation," Hannah said without preamble. "And the others, Sandoval, Harriman, all of them. I've been documenting everything for the past year. My surprise must have shown despite my attempts to maintain composure. I'm not the naive assistant he thinks I am," she continued. "I have 2 engineering degrees and was working on my own medical device startup when I took the position at Archangel to learn about venture funding. Instead, I got an education in corporate fraud." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, still cautious. Hannah extracted a thumb drive from her purse, placing it discreetly on the table between us. "Because yesterday Michael instructed me to prepare termination papers for 3 employees who've been asking questions about the Neurocrest intellectual property claims. And because this morning's emergency meeting confirmed what I've suspected, he's accelerating his timeline because he thinks he has leverage over you." I didn't reach for the drive immediately. "What's on it?" "Original versions of contracts before and after Michael's alterations. Internal emails discussing how to extract intellectual property through licensing loopholes. Financial records showing how they've hidden payments to regulatory consultants." She paused. "And recordings. I've been wearing a wire to executive meetings for 6 months." Emma was watching me carefully. "I verified some of the documents before bringing her to meet you. They're legitimate, Caroline." I finally picked up the thumb drive. "Why didn't you go directly to the authorities?" Hannah's expression hardened. "I tried, 3 months ago. Was told they needed more substantial evidence before opening an investigation into a respected financial institution with powerful connections." Her bitter emphasis conveyed exactly how that interaction had gone. "When I heard about your divorce settlement, giving Michael complete control of Archangel, I knew something wasn't right. You're too smart to walk away with nothing unless you had another plan. What do you want in exchange for this?" I asked directly. immunity when this all crashes down, and a position in whatever rises from Archangel's ashes. Her requirements were clear and reasonable. I have my own ideas about ethical venture funding for medical innovations. Ideas that actually support founders instead of stealing from them. After a moment's consideration, I nodded. I'll need to verify these materials first. Of course. Hannah stood to leave. I should get back before I'm missed. Michael's in an expansive mood today, buying gifts for Irina and talking about European vacations. Whatever you're planning, I think it's working. After she departed, Emma raised an eyebrow. Well, that was unexpected. But potentially valuable, I mused, securing the thumb drive in my purse. If her documentation is legitimate, it could significantly strengthen our case. You don't sound completely convinced. In my experience, convenient allies appearing at critical moments warrant careful verification. I signaled for the waiter. I'll have Javier authenticate everything before incorporating it into our evidence package. Over lunch, Emma updated me on social intelligence she'd gathered through Chicago's business circles. Michael had been subtly inquiring about my activities, presenting himself as the concerned ex-husband worried about my emotional state. His performative concern was creating exactly the sympathetic narrative he intended. He's telling people you seemed unstable during the settlement negotiations, Emma reported with disgust. Setting the groundwork to discredit you if you make accusations later. Predictable, I replied, unsurprised. It's his standard approach when feeling threatened by women. He did the same to Rebecca Chen when she first raised concerns about the licensing terms. By the time I returned to my apartment, Javier was already analyzing Hannah's thumb drive, his expression growing increasingly impressed as he verified its contents. If this is a plant, it's the most elaborate one I've ever seen, he concluded after 2 hours of authentication work. The document metadata is consistent with internal creation at Archangel. The audio recordings contain ambient sound patterns that match the office layout, and the email headers have encryption signatures that would be nearly impossible to falsify. So she's legitimate, I said, reviewing the materials myself. More than legitimate. She's a gold mine. Her documentation fills several gaps in our evidence timeline. And these recordings. He played a clip of Michael discussing with Terrence how to structure the acquisition to obscure the technology appropriation. This is explicit acknowledgement of fraudulent intent. The SEC will have a field day. I forwarded the most critical files to Diane with a brief message. New evidence from internal source. Authenticated and significant. Incorporate into Monday's filings. Her response was immediate. This changes the calculus. Criminal charges now virtually certain. While Javier continued integrating Hannah's evidence into our master documentation, I monitored Michael's activities through the watch. He'd completed his shopping expedition and was now at Irina's apartment, his heart rate patterns suggesting intimate activities I had no interest in observing. Activate the secondary alert system, I instructed Javier. Let's increase his perception that his intrusion into my files has been detected. Implementing now, he confirmed. This will create escalating security notifications in the fabricated server logs. If he checks, he'll believe your team is actively investigating the breach. Perfect. Let's see how he responds to perceived pressure. We didn't have to wait long. Within 40 minutes, the watch audio captured a phone conversation between Michael and David Schiff, their legal counsel. The system's showing security alerts, Michael reported tensely. Someone on Caroline's team may have detected the access. Have they traced it back to you? David asked, concern evident. No indication of that yet. But we should accelerate our timeline. Move the NeuroCrest announcement to Monday morning before the investor meeting. That's aggressive, David cautioned. We haven't completed all the compliance reviews. Forget the compliance reviews, Michael snapped. We need this locked down before Caroline can create any problems. Issue the press release first thing Monday, 8 a.m. We'll present the investors, with a fait accompli. After the call ended, I turned to Javier with satisfaction. He's doing exactly what we want. Rushing the announcement, bypassing compliance protocols, creating additional evidence of intent. And moving their announcement to 8 a.m., Javier noted, gives us perfect timing for the 9 a.m. regulatory filings. They'll barely have time to celebrate before everything collapses. I checked my watch, my real one, not the Trojan horse tracking Michael's every move. We need to alert the founders about the accelerated timeline. Everyone needs to be prepared for earlier media contact. Already drafting the update, Javier confirmed, sending notifications through our secure communication channel to all 14 founders participating in the complaint filings. As evening approached, the watch data showed Michael returning to his penthouse alone. His heart rate remained elevated, but his patterns had shifted from excitement to anxiety. The security alerts had accomplished their purpose, creating just enough pressure to push him toward impulsive action without triggering full defensive measures. Outside, as the valet brought my car, Diane squeezed my arm gently. "You're holding up remarkably well." "This stopped being emotional for me months ago," I replied. "Now it's just chess." Back at my apartment, Javier had ordered takeout and was monitoring Michael's dinner meeting through the watch's audio capability. "He's promising 300% returns in 18 months, Javier reported, shaking his head. "Based on projections derived from Neurocrest's stolen technology. Record everything," I instructed. "Those investors will become witnesses once the fraud is exposed." I checked the monitors showing Michael's earlier digital activities. He had methodically explored the first 2 layers of our fabricated evidence, creating secure copies of everything he found. The system logs indicated he'd spent considerable time examining the apparent communications between me and offshore entities, likely constructing theories about potential illegalities. He'll resume his exploration tonight, I predicted. After the investors leave, he'll return home alone and continue digging. "The next layer is ready," Javier confirmed. "Once he breaches it, he'll find what appears to be a comprehensive record of your family's questionable business dealings stretching back 3 generations. Fabricated with just enough truth to be convincing," I added. "My grandfather's actual SEC investigation in the 1980s provides the perfect foundation for the fictional improprieties we've constructed." We settled in for the evening, monitoring Michael's movements as he finished dinner, parted from the investors with handshakes and promises, and drove home alone. The watch tracked his journey precisely, his elevated heart rate suggesting continued excitement about his discoveries. At 11:17 p.m., exactly as predicted, Michael logged into his secure terminal at home and resumed his exploration of what he believed was my private server. The watch's audio capture transmitted the sound of whiskey being poured, ice clinking against glass, a celebration of his apparent advantage. "He's going straight for the encrypted folder," Javier noted as the access logs updated. "Bypassing the secondary security measures exactly as we anticipated." I watched the screen as Michael systematically dismantled the encryption protocols we'd designed specifically for his techniques. Each breach led him deeper into our constructed reality, each discovered secret reinforcing his belief that he'd found devastating leverage. By 1:30 a.m., he had accessed the crown jewel of our fabrication, apparent documentation of my family's involvement in manipulating regulatory approvals for medical devices, including those developed by Rebecca Chen's competitors. A perfect narrative that would seem to explain my interest in Archangel's operations and provide Michael with what he would believe was ironclad protection against any accusations I might make. The watch registered his heart rate, peaking at 110 BPM as he reviewed these files. Through the audio, we heard his satisfied laugh, followed by a phone call. "Terry, it's me." Michael's voice came through clearly. "I know it's late, but I've found something you need to see tomorrow." "No, can't discuss it over the phone. Just be at the office early. Trust me, this changes everything about our situation with Caroline." After hanging up, he made one more call, to Irina. Hey, I'll be coming over after all. I've had a breakthrough with that situation we discussed. No, nothing to worry about anymore. In fact, we should celebrate. When the calls ended, Javier looked at me. He's completely convinced. Every action indicates he believes he's found genuine evidence. Of course he is, I replied, watching the location tracker as Michael headed toward Irina's apartment. Michael always believes what he wants to believe. It's his greatest weakness. And you've exploited it perfectly, Javier observed. He'll spend the weekend building his strategy around this fabricated leverage, never suspecting that Monday morning will bring his complete destruction. I closed my laptop, suddenly tired. The day's tensions, the careful performance at dinner, the constant monitoring. It was exhausting even with the satisfaction of seeing the plan unfold successfully. Get some rest, I told Javier. Tomorrow he'll involve his partners, spreading the deception exactly as we need him to. Everyone at Archangel will be focused on what they think is my vulnerability, completely blind to their actual peril. As I prepared for bed, I realized that after months of planning, years of documentation, and a lifetime of being underestimated, I was finally within days of justice. Not just for myself, but for Rebecca Chen, for Sandoval, for every innovator whose work had been stolen through Michael's sophisticated fraud. The watch continued transmitting through the night, tracking Michael's movements, recording his conversations, and leading him step by step into the elaborate trap I'd constructed. He thought the expensive timepiece was merely a peace offering from a defeated ex-wife. In reality, it was the instrument of his destruction, ticking away the remaining hours of his freedom, his reputation, and his ill-gotten success. The final countdown had begun. Saturday morning arrived with a flurry of activity on our monitoring systems. Michael had called an emergency weekend meeting with his executive team at Archangel's offices. The watch's GPS showed him arriving at 7:42 a.m., followed in quick succession by his 3 partners. His heart rate remained elevated, a steady 89. BPM suggesting continued excitement about his perceived advantage. He's gathering his allies, I observed, reviewing the data while Javier prepared fresh coffee. After working through the night, he'd crashed on my sofa for a few hours before resuming his vigilant monitoring. As predicted, Javier agreed, sliding a cup toward me. The audio capture is active in the conference room. We should have full coverage of their discussion. I sipped the strong coffee, focusing on the live transcription appearing on our main screen as Michael's meeting began. What I'm about to show you doesn't leave this room. Michael's voice came through clearly. I've discovered something that changes everything about our situation with Caroline. The audio captured the sounds of laptops opening, chairs shifting, as his partners leaned forward with interest. You found leverage? That was Terrence Kalman, Archangel's chief financial officer and the architect of their complex accounting deceptions. Better than leverage, Michael replied, the smug satisfaction evident in his tone. I've uncovered evidence that Caroline's family has been involved in regulatory manipulation for decades, specifically creating backdoor approvals for medical technologies that competed directly with Neurocrest. A low whistle from David Schiff, their legal counsel. Are you certain it's authentic? I've verified the digital signatures and cross-referenced against public records. It's real. Michael's confidence was absolute, exactly as we'd planned. Her family created shell companies to influence FDA approvals while simultaneously investing in competing technologies. The conflicts of interest are glaring and thoroughly documented. This explains why she was so interested in our medical technology portfolio, James Winston, their operations director, observed. Precisely, Michael confirmed. She wasn't just supporting my business, she was gathering intelligence for her family's operations. The irony was exquisite. Michael was constructing an entirely fictional narrative based on our fabricated evidence, yet it mirrored exactly what he had done to me, using our relationship to advance his hidden agenda. So, what's our play? Terrence asked, always focused on actionable strategy. We sit on this until she makes a move, Michael explained. The moment she raises any concerns about our business practices or the NeuroCrest acquisition, we reveal what we know about her family's activities. Mutually assured destruction. She signed away her claims to Archangel in the divorce settlement, David reminded him. Why would she make any moves against us now? Because Caroline never concedes without a backup plan, Michael replied, inadvertently paying me a compliment. I know her. She gave up too easily in the settlement negotiations. She's planning something. I couldn't help but smile at his assessment. At least he'd learned that much about me in 7 years. The best part, Michael continued, is that she delivered the means of her own destruction right into my hands. That watch she gave me as a parting gift? I had the tech team scan it yesterday. It's clean, no tracking devices, no bugs. Just an expensive watch from a woman who still thinks appearances matter more than substance? Javier and I exchanged glances. Of course, their scan had found nothing. Our technology was military grade, designed to be undetectable by commercial security tools. So we continue with the NeuroCrest acquisition as planned, James asked. Full speed ahead, Michael confirmed. In fact, let's accelerate. I want to announce at Monday's investor briefing, followed by a press release Tuesday morning. The meeting continued with tactical discussions about the acquisition timeline, funding allocations, and market positioning. Every detail they discussed was being recorded, transcribed, and securely stored. Additional evidence of their fraudulent intent regarding Rebecca Chen's stolen technology. When the audio feed indicated the meeting was concluding, I turned to Javier. Time for Phase 3. Activate the alert system in the fabricated files. Make it appear that unauthorized access has been detected. Javier's fingers flew across his keyboard. Implementing now. This will create apparent security notifications that seem to be alerting your private server administrators about the breach. When you've spent 7 years watching someone systematically deceive and manipulate people, you learn to be thorough, I replied. Michael doesn't just deserve to lose his company, he needs to face justice for what he's done to innovators, like you. After a moment's contemplation, Rebecca nodded decisively. I'm in. Tell me what you need me to do. For the next hour, we reviewed the deposition process, the specific evidence related to her case, and the expected timeline. Rebecca's scientific precision made her an ideal witness. Her documentation was impeccable, her memory for details extraordinary. One last thing, I said as our meeting concluded. Michael can't know we've connected. If he suspects we're coordinating, he'll start destroying evidence. Don't worry, Rebecca assured me, gathering her things. The only time I plan to see Michael Harrington again is across a courtroom. Back in my car, I checked the secure phone. Multiple notifications from Javier. Watch indicates elevated heart rate at 9:47 a.m. Subject accessed main server through private terminal at 9:52 a.m. First breadcrumb discovered at 10:14 a.m. He's following the trail. Earlier than expected. Michael's paranoia about security had accelerated our timeline. I texted Diane. Phase 2 progressing ahead of schedule. Alert the others. By the time I returned to my apartment, Javier had transformed my kitchen counter into a command center of monitors displaying various aspects of Michael's activities. His expression was animated as I entered. Your ex-husband is impressively persistent, he said, pointing to a screen showing a log of access attempts. He found the first breadcrumb and immediately began probing deeper rather than reporting the security anomaly to his team. Because he thinks he's found something valuable, I explained, setting down my portfolio. Michael never shares potential advantages until he's exploited them fully. Well, he's exploiting this one aggressively. He's already uncovered the second layer, the fake cloud storage access point. I moved closer, watching the activity logs. Scroll by. Has he found the personal files yet? Not yet. He's being methodical, checking for traps before diving in. Smart, actually. Javier adjusted some parameters on his laptop. But we've designed the pathway to appear increasingly secure, yet vulnerable to his specific techniques. It's like watching a mouse follow a pheromone trail. The central monitor displayed a schematic of the digital labyrinth we'd constructed. Each node represented a security layer designed to be breached in a specific sequence, leading Michael deeper into what he would believe was my private data. Financial records, family business dealings, and apparent communications with offshore entities, all meticulously fabricated to suggest impropriety while containing just enough truth to seem authentic. There, Javier pointed as an alert flashed on the screen. He's accessing the first set of financial documents. I checked the watch telemetry. Michael's heart rate had elevated to 92 BPM. Excitement, not exertion. He thought he'd struck gold. Now, we wait, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. Michael will spend hours verifying what he's found before proceeding. He never makes moves based on initial discoveries. Javier nodded. Smart strategy in cybersecurity. Unfortunately for him, we've anticipated every verification method he might use. 7 years of marriage has its advantages, I remarked. I know exactly how Michael thinks, how he operates, and most importantly, what he wants to believe. My phone buzzed with a message from Emma. Just saw Michael at the Standard Club. He looked distracted but smug. What's happening? I replied simply, Phase 2 in progress. He took the bait. While Javier monitored Michael's digital exploration, I reviewed reports from the private investigators tracking Archangel's other executives. Michael's 3 partners, James Winston, Terrence Kalman, and David Schiff, were equally complicit in the company's fraudulent practices. Each had been assigned their own surveillance team, ensuring that when Michael fell, there would be no one left to salvage the operation. Activity spike, Javier announced at 3:42 p.m. He's accessed the folder containing communications with the Cayman entities. The watch telemetry confirmed Michael's excitement, heart rate now at 98 BPM. He believed he'd discovered evidence of illegal offshore accounts connected to my family's business interests. Accounts that, if exposed, could create significant legal problems for me, or so he thought. Is he copying the files? I asked. Better than that. He's creating a secure backup on his private server. Javier couldn't hide his satisfaction. He's basically doing our evidence distribution for us, creating time-stamped records of his own illegal access. Perfect. I checked my watch. He has a dinner meeting with potential investors at 7. Based on his patterns, he'll resume his investigation around 11 when he returns home. Giving us time to deploy the next layer, Javier confirmed. The false communications with regulatory authorities. This was the most delicate aspect of our plan. Fabricated exchanges suggesting I had reported concerns about Archangel's practices to the SEC, but subsequently withdrawn them as part of our divorce settlement. A golden opportunity for Michael to discredit any future allegations by painting me as a vindictive ex-wife who had already tried and failed to cause trouble. Bait within bait within bait. I'm heading out, I told Javier. I have dinner with Diane to finalize the SEC filing timeline. Will you be all right here? I've got everything under control, he assured me. By morning, Michael will think he has enough leverage to blackmail you into silence forever. And by next week, he'll understand just how catastrophically wrong he was. Diane was waiting at a Linea, Chicago's premier fine dining establishment, and not coincidentally, a favorite of Michael's. The risk of running into him was calculated. We wanted him to see me moving on, confident and untroubled, further reinforcing his belief that I remained unaware of his digital espionage. You're looking satisfied, Diane observed as I joined her at the table. Phase 2 is proceeding ahead of schedule, I replied, accepting the wine list from the sommelier. Michael discovered the access point this morning and has been exploring the fabricated files all day. Diane raised an eyebrow. That is good news. Rebecca Chen called after your meeting. She's fully committed and has convinced Sandoval to join as well. 14 founders, I noted with satisfaction. More than enough to establish a pattern of systematic fraud. We ordered a bottle of Chateau Margaux, Michael's favorite vintage, another calculated choice should he happen to see us, and discussed the precise timing of the regulatory filings. Each complaint would be submitted at precisely 9 a.m. Monday morning, simultaneously hitting the SEC, FTC, and the Attorney General's office. The press releases are prepared, Diane confirmed, set to distribute at 9:05, immediately after we receive confirmation of the filings. And the investor notification system, programmed to activate at 9:10. Every major investor in Archangel will receive documentation of the complaints simultaneously. Diane took a careful sip of her wine. It will be comprehensive and instantaneous. No time for Michael or his partners to establish a counter-narrative. What about Irina? I asked, more out of curiosity than concern. Diane's expression hardened slightly. Our investigators confirmed she was fully aware of Michael's married status from the beginning. Additionally, she's been feeding information about Archangel's portfolio companies to competitors in exchange for consulting contracts. Does Michael know? Not yet, but the evidence will be included in Monday's filings. Diane studied me for a moment. Are you having second thoughts about any of this? I considered the question seriously. The elaborate plan we'd constructed would not just end Michael's career, it would likely result in criminal charges, financial ruin, and permanent professional disgrace. No, I said finally. This isn't about our marriage or his infidelity. It's about justice for the people he's defrauded and the innovations he's stolen. Michael didn't just betray me. He betrayed every principle of ethical business conduct. Diane nodded, satisfied. Then let's proceed as planned. I'll notify the legal team to prepare for Monday's filings. As we finished dinner, a familiar voice caught my attention from across the restaurant. Michael had arrived with his investors, right on schedule according to his calendar. Our table was partially obscured by a decorative screen, allowing me to observe without being immediately noticed. He was wearing the watch, the gift that was steadily leading him toward his own destruction. Don't look now, I murmured to Diane. But our subject has arrived with the Seattle investors. Diane subtly adjusted her position. Quite the performance he's putting on. You'd never know he spent his day illegally accessing what he believes are your private files. That's Michael's specialty, compartmentalization. He can pursue multiple contradictory agendas simultaneously without any apparent cognitive dissonance. We lingered over dessert, timing our departure to coincide with Michael's main course. As we stood to leave, I deliberately caught his eye, offering a polite nod of acknowledgement that would appear civilized to his companions, while conveying nothing of my inner thoughts. His momentary confusion was priceless, seeing his ex-wife, apparently enjoying an expensive dinner with her divorce attorney, showing no signs of distress or defeat. It disrupted his narrative, created cognitive dissonance that would further fuel his desire to leverage what he thought he'd discovered. In my files, I handed him a cup of espresso. Everything's functioning as expected? Better. He opened his laptop, displaying a complex dashboard of metrics and activity logs. The watch is performing exceptionally well. Audio clarity is superior to our projections, and the GPS is accurate within 2 meters. And the breadcrumbs? First set deployed at 3:17 a.m. The system detected his personal device scanning for networks. We injected the initial packet during his standard email check. Javier pointed to a blinking indicator. Based on his browsing patterns, he'll discover the first anomaly within 36 hours. I nodded, studying the dashboard. Sooner. Michael's methodical about digital security. He'll run his weekly system scan tonight. You're the expert on his habits, Javier conceded. If that's the case, he'll find the first breadcrumb by midnight. And it will appear as an accident? A security flaw he discovered himself? Absolutely. To him, it will look like he's uncovered. A hidden network access point. His curiosity will do the rest. Javier sipped his espresso. The second breadcrumb is prepped for deployment once he investigates the first. I checked my watch. I have a meeting with Rebecca Chen at 10 seconds. Will you need anything else before I leave? Just stable internet and your continued payment for my considerable talents, he replied with a tired smile. The final installment will process once Phase 2 completes successfully. I gathered my portfolio and car keys. I'll be back by 2. Monitor his heart rate patterns. They spike when he's discovered something he thinks is valuable. Already on it, Javier said, settling in at my kitchen counter. He had quite the elevation last night around 11 p.m. Not to intrude on your personal life, but that would be Irina, I said flatly. His heart rate isn't my concern unless it's reacting to our digital trail. Downtown traffic was mercifully light as I drove to the small cafe where I'd arranged to meet Rebecca. We'd chosen a location far from Archangel's offices and Michael's usual haunts, a necessary precaution now that we were moving to the active phase of the plan. Rebecca was already waiting, partially hidden behind an enormous fern in the cafe's corner. At 34, she possessed the intense focus common to medical innovators, coupled with the wariness of someone who'd been betrayed by people she trusted. Caroline, she greeted me with a quick hug. You're looking well for someone who just got divorced. Final papers were filed yesterday, I confirmed, sliding into the seat across from her. How are you holding up? Her expression tightened. I just heard about the NeuroCrest acquisition. Apparently Michael's taking them public next quarter, with Phi. Your technology, I added, keeping my voice low. With my life's work, she corrected, anger flashing in her eyes. 3 years of research, clinical trials, patents, all stripped away through contract clauses I never should have agreed to. Which is why we're here. I removed a tablet from my portfolio, activating its security protocols before sliding it across the table. Review these documents carefully. They detail the evidence we've compiled about Archangel's systematic intellectual property theft across 14 portfolio companies. Rebecca's eyes widened as she scrolled through the files. This is comprehensive. How did you obtain internal communications between Michael and his partners? Let's just say I had access that Michael wasn't aware of, I replied. The important thing is that it creates a pattern of deliberate fraud that the SEC can't ignore. And my technology? Page 17. We've documented how they extracted your core algorithm through the subsidiary licensing agreement, then repackaged it for NeuroCrest's implementation. Rebecca continued reading, her scientist's mind processing the evidence methodically. This is enough to stop the acquisition, isn't it? It's enough to stop Archangel entirely, I confirmed. But timing is crucial. We need all the affected founders to file complaints simultaneously, creating a wave the regulators can't dismiss as isolated incidents. How many have agreed so far? 11 confirmed. You would make 12. I leaned forward. The others are waiting on you, Rebecca. Your case is the most egregious, the easiest to prove, and the most emotionally compelling. She set down the tablet, conflict evident in her expression. If I do this, NeuroCrest will collapse too. There are innocent researchers there who will be protected, I interjected. The restructuring plan includes provisions for all legitimate researchers and developers to retain their positions. Only the executives who knowingly participated in the fraud will face consequences. Rebecca studied me with newfound respect. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Michael always claimed to champion women in business. Soon, women in business would be standing over the ruins of his career, rebuilding something legitimate from his fraudulent foundation. I checked my watch, the real one, not Michael's transmitting. IFT. 11:47 p.m. Phase 2 would activate in 13 minutes. I should try to sleep, conserve energy for tomorrow's carefully choreographed moves. Instead, I found myself drawn back to the window, watching the city lights flicker against the night. Sky, Chicago, the city where I'd met Michael, where we'd built our life, where I'd discovered his betrayal, and where I would orchestrate his downfall. My phone vibrated on the counter, a message from Jay. Systems ready, awaiting your final authorization. Typed my response. Proceed as planned. Full activation. With that command, the machinery of Michael's destruction was officially in motion. The goodbye gift I'd placed on his wrist was now transmitting its data to our servers, mapping his movements, recording his conversations, and preparing to lead him precisely where I wanted him. As midnight struck, I raised my wine glass to the Chicago skyline. "Happy Independence Day to me," I whispered to the empty apartment. The watch on Michael's wrist emitted an almost imperceptible vibration as Phase 2 initiated, a subtle pulse he would likely attribute to a notification, or perhaps not notice at all. But that gentle vibration signaled the beginning of the end of everything he had built on lies, theft, and betrayal. He had once told me, in a rare moment of unguarded honesty early in our marriage, that his greatest fear was being exposed as a fraud. "Sometimes I wonder if I actually deserve any of this," he'd confessed after a particularly successful funding round. "You do," I'd assured him then, believing it myself. Now, years later, I would make his fear reality. Michael Harrington was indeed a fraud, and soon, everyone would know it. I finished my wine and headed to bed. Tomorrow would bring the first visible threads of my plan into the light, and I needed to be sharp, focused, and ready to adapt if necessary. Though with the level of preparation I'd put into this, adaptation seemed unlikely. Michael had always said I was too methodical, too careful, too unwilling to embrace risk. "That's why you'll always be supporting others' visions instead of creating your own," he'd told me during our last fight. He would soon discover just how visionary I could be, and just how methodical my revenge. The watch kept silently transmitting through the night, capturing Michael's every move, every word, every heartbeat. In the darkness of Lincoln Park, he slept beside Irina, blissfully unaware that the expensive farewell gift on his wrist was actually the key to his undoing. The perfect goodbye gift, indeed. Morning arrived with a series of notifications on my secure phone. The first phase of the server infiltration had completed successfully. Michael's watch had connected to his home Wi-Fi, office network, and most importantly, his private laptop, creating entry points into each system. The specialized program had performed flawlessly during the midnight power fluctuation, establishing our shadow pathways without triggering any security alerts. I sipped my espresso, reviewing the overnight data. Michael had left Irina's apartment at 6:17 a.m., stopped at his regular coffee shop, and arrived at Archangel's offices by 7:30, earlier than usual. Interesting. The watch's audio had captured several phone calls, including one to his lawyer confirming receipt of the filed divorce papers. Another to his executive assistant, instructing her to move forward with the Neurocrest acquisition. Neurocrest, Rebecca Chen's competitor. The timing wasn't coincidental. I opened my laptop, accessing the shadow system we'd installed. Archangels. Internal communications were now an open book to me, despite their supposed military-grade encryption. Encryption that Michael had once bragged about implementing on my recommendation. The irony wasn't lost on me. A message from Diane appeared on my screen. "Surveillance package activated. Courts are processing final divorce decree. No complications." Perfect. "Monitor Neurocrest communications," I replied. "Michael's accelerating the acquisition." My doorbell rang at precisely 8:30 a.m. Through the security camera, I recognized Javier Morales, J, in my encrypted communications. Former cybersecurity expert for the NSA, now an independent consultant who specialized in what he euphemistically called corporate counterintelligence. His services weren't cheap, but they were comprehensive and, most importantly, untraceable. "You look terrible," I said as I opened the door. Javier smiled wearily, dark circles prominent under his eyes. 48 hours of system implementation. We'll do that." He placed his laptop bag on my counter. "But it was worth it. Your ex-husband has the most impressive security I've seen in a private firm. I should say. In my car, I checked my secure phone. The watch was transmitting perfectly. Michael was currently at the Capitol Grill with two men identified by my facial recognition software as potential investors from Seattle. I could activate the audio, listen to his pitch, his likely embellishments about Archangel's success metrics. But I didn't need to. I already knew exactly what he would say, which proprietary algorithms he would claim as his own, which success stories he would appropriate. Instead, I drove to my new apartment in a building where Michael would never think to look for me. Not the luxury high-rise he would expect, but a modest converted warehouse in an up-and-coming neighborhood. The perfect place to disappear while orchestrating his implosion. Inside, I kicked off my Louboutins and poured a glass of Cabernet. My laptop was already open on the kitchen counter, displaying a dashboard of Michael's activities. The watch was performing perfectly, uploading his location data, surrounding audio, and even his heart rate. Currently elevated, he was either lying or nervous about the investor meeting. My phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "How did it go? Need me to come over?" I typed a quick response. "All according to plan. Just got home. Talk tomorrow." Setting. Down the phone, I moved to the windows overlooking the city lights. 7 years of marriage reduced to signatures and strategies. 7 years of watching Michael take credit for my ideas, leverage my connections, and plan his eventual separation from me while I quietly documented every transgression. My father had warned me about men like Michael, charming, ambitious, but fundamentally self-serving. "They see relationships as transactions," he'd said after meeting Michael for the first time. "Be careful, Caroline." I should have listened. Instead, I'd defended Michael, convinced that beneath his ambitious exterior was the man I fell in love with at Northwestern's business incubator program, the brilliant, passionate entrepreneur with world-changing ideas. It had taken years to realize those ideas were primarily mine, refined and repackaged with his charismatic delivery. My phone buzzed again. Not Emma this time, but a notification from the watch. Michael had left the restaurant and was heading, not home, not to his office, but to an address in Lincoln Park. Irina's place, most likely. I felt nothing. No jealousy, no anger, no hurt. Those emotions had been exhausted months ago, replaced with cold, focused purpose. Irina was irrelevant, collateral damage in Michael's impending destruction. She had her own lessons to learn about men who betrayed their wives. Taking my wine to the home office, I logged into my secure system to check the final preparations for Phase 2. At midnight, a scheduled power fluctuation would affect the Archangel servers, triggering the backup systems. During the reboot, our specialized software would create a shadow pathway, invisible to normal security protocols, that would allow us to monitor all internal communications. More importantly, it would plant the digital breadcrumbs leading to what Michael would believe was my personal cloud storage, containing what appeared to be incriminating information about my family's business dealings. The kind of information a man like Michael would immediately recognize as valuable leverage, the bait within the bait. A nested trap. On my secondary monitor, financial records scrolled past, evidence of Michael's systematic fraud, mirroring legitimate transactions with shadow withdrawals to offshore accounts, classic embezzlement, but with a sophisticated twist that had kept it hidden from ordinary audits. It had taken me months of forensic accounting to untangle his scheme, a scheme that had victimized not just his investors but the very women entrepreneurs Archangel claimed to support. Women like Rebecca Chen, whose groundbreaking medical technology had been essentially stolen through contractual fine print and licensing loopholes. The watch notification pinged again. Michael had arrived at his destination, Lincoln Park, as expected. His heart rate was elevating again, but for different reasons now. I closed the laptop. Some details I didn't need to know. Instead, I moved to the spare bedroom I'd converted into a planning space. The walls were covered with flowcharts, timelines, and profiles. Michael's partners, investors, clients, mistresses. Each connected by red string to documents, bank statements, and transcripts. Old school, yes, but seeing the entire operation visualized helped me ensure no loose ends remained. In the center was the core of my plan, the complete dismantling of Archangel Capital Partners, followed by its resurrection under new management, with the victimized founders as majority shareholders. Justice disguised as market correction. "Your guest is already here," Victor murmured, gesturing toward the table where Diane Lockhart sat reviewing documents. "Caroline," she greeted me, standing to exchange cheek kisses. "How did it go?" "Exactly as planned," I replied, taking my seat. He accepted everything without question, including the watch. Diane's expression remained professional, but I caught the slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. At 62, she'd been handling high-profile divorces for decades, but never one quite like mine. And Bradford didn't suspect anything? Bradford was too busy trying to end the meeting to notice what his client was signing, I said, accepting the menu from the waiter. "Then congratulations are in order," Diane said, raising her water glass. "You're officially divorced." I clinked my glass against hers. "And the real work begins." After ordering, I extracted a slim USB drive from my purse, sliding it across the table. "Everything's here. The altered settlement agreement Michael signed today, the real one we filed last month, and documentation of every illegal transaction he's authorized in the past 5 years. Diane discreetly pocketed the drive. "Are you absolutely certain about this? Once we initiate Phase 2, there's no turning back. I've had 8 months to consider every angle. Michael crossed lines that can't be uncrossed. This isn't just about revenge. It's about justice." Diane nodded slowly. "I've reviewed the evidence. What he's done with investor funds alone could put him away for 15 years. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the women whose startups Michael had secretly undermined after pressuring them to sign predatory contracts. The entrepreneurs who lost everything while he walked away, enriched by their intellectual property. "He's hurt too many people," I said quietly. "And not just me." Our food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. I picked at my salmon, my appetite diminished by the day's events and the anticipation of what was to come. "Rebecca Chen called this morning," Diane mentioned casually, though we both knew there was nothing casual about it. Rebecca was the founder of Neuralign, a promising medical technology company that had collapsed after partnering with Archangel. "She's willing to testify about the altered contracts." "Good," I nodded. "We'll need her. What about Sandoval?" "Still hesitant, but his deposition is secured. Once he sees the others coming forward, he'll commit." I took a sip of water, considering our timeline. Michael has a pattern. The watch will lead him to the fabricated files within 3 days. His curiosity won't allow him to ignore the inconsistencies. Once he accesses what he thinks is my personal server, the tracking software activates, Diane finished, and every move he makes becomes evidence. Precisely. I finally took a bite of my salmon. He'll think he's found my vulnerability, never realizing he's walking into a trap of his own making. "It's elegant," Diane admitted, "but complex. One mistake." "There won't be," I interrupted. "I've accounted for every variable, including Michael's predictable responses. The watch isn't just a tracker, it's psychological bait. He won't be able to resist following where it leads." As dinner concluded, Diane regarded me with a mix of admiration and concern. "You know, in 30 years of practice, I've seen hundreds of divorce cases, infidelity, financial deception, emotional abuse. I thought I'd seen every possible betrayal. But what Michael did, systematically using your connections, your ideas, your money to build his empire while planning to discard you, it's uniquely calculated. Which is why my response must be equally calculated," I replied. signing the check. Michael believes I'm walking away with a fraction of what I'm entitled to. He's already celebrating his victory, while remaining completely unaware that you're the majority shareholder in his company's largest client through your shell corporation, Diane added. Not to mention the evidence you've compiled about his fraudulent practices. I smiled thinly. Michael always underestimated me. He saw what he wanted to see: the supportive wife, the convenient connection to Chicago's business elite, the silent investor who asked few questions. His mistake, Diane said, gathering her things. His fatal mistake, I corrected, standing, to leave. By this time next month, Archangel will be under investigation, its assets frozen, and Michael will finally understand that I was never just an accessory to his ambitions. I was always the architect of his success, and now the engineer of his downfall. Outside, the night had turned cold, the wind whipping between the buildings with Chicago's signature ferocity. Diane and I parted with a brief hug, our next meeting already scheduled for when Phase 2 was complete. Delayed in court, I replied smoothly. She sends her apologies but assured me we could proceed. All the papers are in order, and I've already reviewed them. Bradford frowned. Ms. Reeves, I strongly advise against proceeding without counsel. Present. I placed my purse on the table, extracting a folder. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Spencer, but I've worked with these contracts for months. And frankly, I'd like this finished today. Michael studied me with the slight smirk that had once charmed me, the expression he wore when he thought he was winning. At 42, he still possessed the confident good looks that opened doors, the salt and pepper hair, the tailored Tom Ford suit, the Patek Philippe watch that I'd given him for our 5th anniversary. If Caroline says she's ready, then she's ready, Michael interjected, checking his watch. I have a 4 o'clock with potential investors. Bradford reluctantly distributed the papers. I read each page carefully, ignoring Michael's impatient sighs. Everything was as expected: the division of properties, the agreement on archangels, ownership, the financial settlement. With each signature, I was systematically dismantling the life we'd built and setting stage for what would follow. And that's it? Michael asked Bradford after I signed the final page. That's it, the lawyer confirmed. Once these are filed with the court tomorrow, your divorce will be finalized. Of course, there's the usual waiting period, but effectively, you are no longer married. Michael's relief was palpable. 7 years ended with a signature, without a single glance at what he was actually signing. Another predictable failure. Well then, I said, reaching into my purse. I have something for you, Michael. His eyebrows rose as I placed the silver box on the table. What's this? Suspicion laced his voice, a parting gift. Something to commemorate our time together and your new beginning. He hesitated before reaching for it, his fingers carefully untying the ribbon. Bradford watched uncomfortably, probably wondering if this was some kind of trap. It was. But not. The kind a divorce lawyer would recognize. Michael lifted the watch from its satin cushion. The Vacheron Constantin patrimony, he said, recognizing it immediately. Caroline, this is unexpected. Consider it a peace offering, I replied, and recognition of what you've built. Archangel is flourishing, and regardless of our personal situation, that success deserves acknowledgement. He examined the watches, and turning it over to see the engraving on the back. Time reveals all truths. See, a shadow of confusion crossed his features before the practiced charm returned. This is very generous, thank you. You're welcome. I gathered my belongings. If we're finished here, I should go. I have a dinner reservation. Date? Michael asked, unable to resist. I merely smiled, offering no explanation. Let him wonder. Let him imagine me moving on while I systematically dismantled everything he valued. As I stood, he removed his current watch, my previous gift, and replaced it with the new one, already taking the bait. Perfect fit, he remarked. I thought it would be, I replied, extending my hand to Bradford. Thank you for your efficiency today. Michael walked me to the elevator, an unexpected courtesy that nearly made me reconsider. Then I remembered the text I'd found. She's a means to an end. 2 more years, 3 tops, then I'll have enough leverage to cut her loose. That message had been sent 5 years ago. I'd stayed 2 years longer than his projection, learning everything about his business, his partners, his methods, and his secrets. Caroline, Michael said as the elevator arrived. For what it's worth, I am sorry for how things ended. We had some good years. I stepped into the elevator, turning to face him. We certainly did. Enjoy the watch, Michael. I picked it specifically for you. The doors closed on his puzzled expression. In his office upstairs, the watch was already transmitting data to my secure server, recording conversations, tracking movements, and most importantly, creating a digital trail leading directly back to my carefully constructed evidence. Phase 1. Complete. In my car, I sent a short text to a number saved simply as J. The package has been delivered. The response came immediately. Acknowledged. Phase 2 commencing at midnight. I started the engine, allowing myself the first genuine smile of the day. Michael always said I was too cautious with my investments, too hesitant to take real risks. He was about to discover just how wrong he'd been. The restaurant was crowded when I arrived, but Victor, the owner, immediately escorted me to my usual corner table. I came here often after discovering the affair. The excellent food and discreet service made it perfect for private conversations away from Michael's social circle. I carefully placed the engraved watch in the gift box, arranging the tissue paper to frame it perfectly. Michael would appreciate the gesture. A no hard feelings parting gift as we finalized our divorce. Of course, what he couldn't know was that this wasn't just a $5,000 Swiss timepiece. It was the first domino in a sequence I'd spent 8 months designing. Are you sure about this? Emma asked, leaning against my kitchen counter with a skeptical expression I'd grown accustomed to. Seems excessive for someone who cheated on you with your wedding photographer. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I smiled, tying the silver ribbon with practiced precision. It's not excessive, it's appropriate. Besides, I want to be civil. What I didn't tell Emma was that civility had nothing to do with it. The watch was bait, and Michael, with his pathological need to flaunt his success, would take it without question. Success that was built on my sacrifices, my connections, and increasingly, I'd discovered, my intellectual property. Civil would be a handshake and signed papers, Emma countered, sipping her wine. Not a watch that costs more than my car. I secured the ribbon with a perfect bow. Michael appreciates the finer things. Always has. Things you paid for, Emma muttered. She wasn't wrong. For 7 years, I had funded Michael's entrepreneurial journey while working 60-hour weeks at the investment firm. I'd introduced him to his clients, edited his proposals, and essentially built the foundation of what was now Archangel Capital Partners, his venture capital firm that, ironically, specialized in women-led startups. I carefully placed the box in my purse. The meeting's at 3. His lawyer said they have the final divorce papers ready. And you're sure you don't want me to come? Emma's concern was touching, if unnecessary. I'm sure. I checked my lipstick in the hall mirror, adjusting my Louboutins. Michael had always said red bottoms made women look desperate for attention. I'd bought 6 pairs the day after I found him with Irina. Just promise me you won't let him talk you into anything else. The settlement's already too generous. I turned to Emma, my oldest friend since law school days. If only she knew that the settlement, giving Michael full ownership of Archangel, was as intentional as everything else. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Trust me," I said. "This is the last time I'll ever give Michael Harrington anything." Outside, the October air carried the first hint of winter. I slid into my Audi, placing the gift on the passenger seat. As I drove toward downtown Chicago, I mentally reviewed the components of my plan. The watch was just the beginning, a Trojan horse containing the first breadcrumb that would lead Michael down a very specific path. I'd discovered Michael's infidelity not by catching him in the act, but through financial discrepancies. As the firm's silent investor, I had access to accounts Michael thought were private. The hotel charges, the gifts, the weekend trips, all poorly disguised as client entertainment. But what he couldn't hide were the conversations about me, the dismissive emails to his partners about his controlling wife, the text messages to Irina describing me as a necessary evil for accessing my family's connections. The true betrayal wasn't the affair. It was learning that my husband of 7 years considered me nothing more than a stepping stone. I parked in the underground garage of the glass and steel building housing Bradbury and Associates, Michael's overpriced lawyers. The gift box felt heavier now, weighted with purpose. Inside was more than a watch. It was a GPS tracker, audio recorder, and the first clue that would eventually lead Michael to a very specific set of files. The elevator ascended silently to the 38th floor. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A cream Armani suit that projected confidence, competence, and just enough femininity to disarm. Michael always underestimated me when I wore cream or pastel. Another weakness I'd cataloged over the years. The receptionist recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Harrington, they're waiting for you in the Azure conference room." "It's Ms. Reeves now," I corrected gently. "Or it will be in about 30 minutes. She blushed, apologizing as she led me down the corridor. Through the glass walls, I could see Michael already seated with his lawyer, Bradford Spencer, an aging bulldog with a reputation for aggressive settlements. My own lawyer, Diane Lockhart, was notably absent, exactly as planned. "Where's Diane?" Michael asked immediately as I entered, his tone suggesting I'd already made a mistake.